Our next speakers are Ana Maria Nino Morcillo and Julia Hu from Lark. Ana Maria is from Foothold Coaching. Ana Maria actually reached out to me a few months ago. First of all, we had over 75 speaking applications to this year's show, and we took 3 of them. Ana Maria and Julia were one of the ones that we took. So they definitely stood out from the crowd. So Julia was so clearly able to identify her mistakes in her early fundraising. My understanding, and they'll tell the story better, is that she was fundraising for months and just not really getting anywhere and not feeling really good about it and just getting really unhappy with the whole process, and then made some very key changes in her approach and in her way of kind of walking into these conversations, and she was able to close a round of funding relatively soon after making those changes. So I thought this was such a great identification of having a failure, talking about what's going on, finding what you can change, and then getting success from it. But I'll let them tell their stories. So I welcome to the stage Ana Maria and Julia.
Thanks, Cass. Good morning, everyone. Our conversation here on stage today was actually inspired by 3 words. I hate fundraising. So, I know Julia said this, but kind of to give her some audience support, any entrepreneurs or founders in the room who have at some point either heard or uttered these 3 words? Just quick show of hands.
That's right.
Okay, so you're not alone. I know that I hear some version of these 3 words pretty much every week. I am an entrepreneur coach. I work exclusively with early stage founders and startup CEOs, and I have coached Julia for the last 2 years. And Julia, the reason that I invited you to come talk with me here today is because some of the fundraising mistakes you've made, the failures you've endured, we're not just talking about typos on the pitch deck or a regret over, not being as articulate as you could have been. We're talking about, failure, cascading failure, chain reaction, downward spiral, or to use the term I often use, fundraising train wrecks. Like something goes off the rail and then the networking, the referrals, all the funding kind of seems to go with it. But you've survived. And that's why I brought you here with me today, because I think your stories can offer a little bit of solace, a little bit of validation for anyone out there who has struggled or is in the throes of it right now, but also some inspiration and some really specific calls to action for how to turn things around and not have it all end in disaster. So with that,
Glad to be here.
Let's go back to the very beginning, the early days of Lark, coming off of a launch at TechCrunch, and you walk into your very first VC pitch meeting. What happened, and when did that first meeting start to go off the rails?
Yeah, so a little bit of background. I had been previously very involved in startups. I had interned for every single GSB, entrepreneur. I had started an incubator, so we helped hundreds of startups get to VC funding. So I was not, completely a novice, and yet this was my first VC meeting as a CEO. And I had just come off from the high of launching at TechCrunch, launching a concept at TechCrunch. And we, very flattered, got some great VCs telling me to come right away. So the next day, I show up at their meeting. I was sadly, the Sandhill traffic was awful, so I got there, I was late. They shuffled me in. They told me to start, just start. No formalities. There was a guy obviously trying to engage me, mm-hmm. and he was with the firm, of course. And then there were these 2 other people in the room. No introduction, and just go on and start. And so I was kind of flailing and going across and talking about my slides, and these two people were sitting there taking all of my prototypes, looking at all of them, taking copious notes, not listening to me. And it started becoming clear to me that they weren't part of the VC company. And I had never been to a VC meeting, so I didn't know what to expect, but I started getting really, really worried. Was my IP being taken? Who were these people? And I kept on going because I felt really vulnerable and not able to actually stop the meeting and say, excuse me, who are you and why are you here? And it was my first meeting ever, so I thought, well, maybe I don't know something, and I'm just being nervous. So that was
that's a brutal start.
I felt a little raped of my IP, and
Yikes.
it was kind of a difficult time.
Okay, so I'm curious, what happened in that first meeting? Were you able to turn things around?
Oh, no, it kind of went downhill from there. So I was kind of talking more in generalities at this point, and we were very young. This was 3.5 years ago. This was seed funding. So I basically tried to get back on the horse, and once something wrong starts, then it's Murphy's Law and everything goes wrong. And you guys have probably pitched where you're showing vaporware, right? So our product is a wireless device that links to iPhone apps that do health monitoring and health coaching and so forth. At the time, though, it was I was pitching a silent alarm clock that was tied to my phone, except the truth was there was no Bluetooth enabled yet. So it was basically a vibration motor inside a wristband. And I will tell you, anyone who's done this, who's like pitched vaporware, when your vaporware starts malfunctioning, then you're like, oh my God. So I was sitting in there trying to get back on my horse, and my bag starts vibrating, and everyone's hearing this like low rumbling buzz. And I had it all set up where I could fake the wireless connection with my phone to my wristband, but then my wristband kind of got automated by itself and started buzzing prematurely. And so my bag was like, bzzz, and I was trying to talk over it. And they were like, what's that noise? And at that point, I was just so nervous and over it. I kind of gracefully told them about our product and said my goodbyes.
Wow. I love that you can tell these just horrible stories with a huge smile on your face. That's something I've always loved about you. So I know that this wasn't just that one meeting, that these sorts of train wrecks happened often when you were raising that first round. And I remember you coming to me and saying, I'm starting to learn a lot about my mindset, that you were really narrowing that it wasn't the vaporware, it was that your mindset that was holding you back.
Yeah. So I did actually end up calling the VC and saying, I felt really uncomfortable. Who were those people? He assured me that they were non-competitive portfolio company. And I felt good in reflecting and being able to pull myself out of that situation with principles and communication, because I just wanted to make it known about my uncomfortableness, but also what happened. Even though I felt like I regained some composure, I do think that it set my months-long course of fundraising with a bad start. And I think that was that momentum or lack thereof really changed the way that I proceeded. And I think that I just became a lot more, a lot less confident, and I started being a little bit fearful and, a little paranoid. And so I think that as a female founder, I don't think that this is especially a female thing, but I think that being a female definitely changes, or we think about ourselves in a very different way. And so I would say that my whole mindset of confidence and we're going to change the world didn't come through in the first few months.
You've said before that you felt small, and in your case it might have been being a woman or being a non-technical founder, those elements of difference. But in my experience, that's something pretty universal. Lots of male entrepreneurs experience low confidence, feeling small, feeling very intimidated when they go into pitch for the first time. So I'd like us to get down into some of the tactics. What did you try? How did you get yourself to a place where you could feel bigger and more powerful?
So I remember when Anna Maria asked me this, what tactical things? I suddenly thought of this story that I hadn't thought about for years. And when I was an undergrad at Stanford, there was a guy who was in a dorm across from me. And it was finals week, and we were all scrambling. We all looked like crap. We were in our sweats and running around trying to get to finals. And there this guy was across the dorm. He was a senior. I was a freshman. He was wearing a full-on suit with a top hat and a cane. And I was like, where are you going? And he's like, you got to dress for success. I'm going to my finals. And I kind of thought, okay, this guy's off the wagon, but power to him, whatever. And I went on my life. And I actually remember taking this advice, and I was actually cutting through the mall trying to get to a coffee meeting, and I went through Nordstrom's, and I saw these shoes, and I was like, these are awesome shoes, and they're totally different from what I usually wear, and I was like, these are awesome shoes. Can I buy these to make them my fundraising shoes? And I know this is, the ladies in the room will understand what shoes do to a woman, but these became my fundraising shoes, and they were the most expensive shoes I had bought, but I take this with a grain of salt. I'm not telling you to go spend on a wardrobe, but I'm wearing these shoes now, and I wear these shoes. They're most expensive things I've bought, but they are. I wear these shoes when I go fundraising and when I speak. I never wear heels otherwise, but these shoes, they kind of just make me feel like the best I can be, like the person that I'm striving to be, and perhaps not yet have become, but I can kind of fake it. So that was one thing that kind of started my how do I change myself quickly to a place where I feel confident. I also started doing things that were very tactical. So I learned a lot about how a woman's posture actually shows submissiveness. So I would sit in the office talking to VCs like this. I'd be very receptive. I'd be a good listener. But at the end of the day, did I feel like a confident CEO that they would entrust their millions of dollars with? And I actually started mimicking them more and putting myself as an equal more. So
could you demo it right now?
So if if I felt small and I felt like I was being submissive, it was all in my head. And I would do some things that would just make me feel larger. And so, I'd sit back and I'd talk to them like this. And unbelievable change within myself of how I could speak, unbelievable change of how they received me. And I would just say, these types of small triggers, really important to articulate and know for yourself so that you can intentionally do it and you know what type of effect it has on people.
I remember once actually asking you to visualize a cartoon. Like, imagine yourself as this superhero. What would you look like? And I totally thought Julia was going to come in with like warrior or superhero with a cape. And she actually came in with pink blob. And this was the visual we found. Julia, can you tell everyone here, I swear, what does the pink blob mean to you and how do you use it in fundraising?
So Anna Maria, after our talk, showed this to me online. She didn't draw it. And for everyone here, I'm not the girl on the left. I'm actually the pink blob. So what I wanted for myself was when I started to experience this downward spiral of emotion, what would I actually trigger in my mind? And before, the picture was, I am floating away. I'm kind of taking a balloon and floating away, and I just want to run away. And what did I actually want to do in these meetings? I wanted to be able to stop the downward spiral and expand. And I thought of this pink blob that expanded in the room and had gravitas, but didn't take themselves so seriously. And whenever there were doubts and challenges, it would just kind of deflect off of me, and I would just, blub, 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 be able to deflect. And so I thought of this. I thought of this pink blob that could help me just not take everything so seriously in the moment and shift the momentum.
Love it. I also remember one of my other favorite breakthroughs that you made was realizing that the pitch meeting doesn't start when you're standing in front of the conference room with people looking at you, that it actually starts before that.
Yeah. So here is another thing. I saw a lot of the times when I walked into a meeting with VCs, it would be, oh, how's the weather? Oh, the weather's great. Oh, yeah, did you see the traffic on Sand Hill? Oh, God, it was awful. A lot of meaningless small talk. I'd actually try to connect to them on a personal level because, having a relationship with VCs is very important. I started talking about kids, how their kids were doing. And not that that's bad. I do care about kids. But what the dynamic that it actually created was small talk, small talk, small talk, sit down, okay, ask for money, beg for money, and they're sitting there, why should I give you money? That is a very, very bad dynamic to start with because it doesn't equalize you. And for me, that was important. So how do I equalize the dynamic so that I can speak with authority and feel like a stronger CEO? Because I am a first-time CEO, and I'm young. So I started thinking about ways to engage them in the waiting room, engage them throughout meetings. So besides structuring kind of a relationship and phone calls and text messages that were actually really helpful because you're developing a relationship over months with VCs. Even VCs that you haven't met before that you're trying to connect with. I felt like the small talk that helped me the most was small talk that could help me understand quickly where these VCs were coming from. And what they actually knew about my market. So I started asking things like, what do you see are the largest opportunities and challenges in the digital health field? What do you think is necessary to get over those? Who do you think can win that? And things like that made it seem like VC, you are amazing at understanding the entire ecosystem and the trends, but I am an actual expert in my field because I live, breathe, and work on this particular field. And so when I could engage them in understanding where they were in understanding, if they were much more sophisticated, I could start jumping into sophistication. If they were down here, I needed to talk about, why this field was important. And so that really helped me. And so I would encourage everyone to think about the questions that you start the conversation with, because it has to be a conversation. Otherwise, they're going to check their BlackBerries, and wait for someone else to invest before they invest.
I think that the way you reframed your mindset away from asking for money or begging for money, you started using different verbs. I'm educating people on trends in digital health, and that really shifted things for you. And you were able to turn it around. You've now raised $11 million over 3 years, and yet, the struggles were not just in the seed round, Julia. They've continued, right? Yeah. I'd love to hear more about, you struggled, you shifted a lot of tactics, you shifted your mindset, but one of the biggest battles that you've only recently really started to figure out how to overcome is about authenticity. How do you kind of continue to show up at yourself? I know you've endured lots of criticism, actually, about your pitch style and communication style. Could you share a little bit more of some recent struggles that you've endured?
So helping shift my mindset from CEO and VC to being an educator of why I think that these problems need to be tackled, and this is the way that we believe technology should help change the world. That really helped me as a person. And I will say that for many months and years prior to that, I was trying to tackle this in a very different way. You guys all see the 22-year-old invincible, hoodie wearing, guy CEO who says basically, fund this or lose $1 billion. And I actually tried that for a while because I was like, okay, if this is what it's going to take to get my team where they need to be, I'll do anything. I'm going to be the invincible, cocky 22-year-old. And I'm just going to go in there and try my best to say, the train's leaving. Are you on it or not? And it was really, really draining. On good days, I could do it, and I think I got away with it. On bad days, I would do it, and it would feel really fake and theatrical, and it was very, very emotionally draining when I couldn't do it. And so being authentic was something that I struggled with a lot. And I talked to Anna Maria constantly. I feel like I'm performing, and the performance is draining my continued resilience. Because that's what you need when month after month you're hearing no's, and you guys know, you're hearing no's left and right, no one believes in it, and so authenticity was really important to me. Yeah.
What were some of the harshest criticisms you received of your pitch style, and when, if ever, did it turn around for you in terms of the feedback you got from VCs?
I got all sorts of things. I mean, people would say that I was too smiley. I mean, too receptive. It's always black and white, but like really passionate, not as articulate, not as business oriented, and too focused on vision, not focused on financials. Too bubbly. No one ever told me too bubbly, but it actually, I think, did affect me in some ways. I was actually trying to tone my bubbliness down because I was actually scared that people thought that I was not serious and that I couldn't make hard decisions because I was bubbly and nice. And so I was actually toning that part of myself down. And I think one of the realizations was I have to feel authentic to keep on going in a way that doesn't make me tired. And I decided that I needed to listen to their feedback, but also to be, in a sense, proud and capitalizing on my best strengths. And I think that those are having a very large vision, listening a lot to people, and optimism in many ways. So.
And I think you got one really great compliment, although it was maybe 2 or 3 months ago, after almost years of doing this. Would you be willing to share that with us?
Sure. So it was after many years, and this whole time I had been trying to switch myself to a much more business-oriented managerial CEO. But I was doing this pitch, and I was just talking about the future and what I saw as the future of digital health and what needed to be done, very broad strokes. And I said, I can't talk about anything in detail right now. We're under a lot of NDAs. And the VC actually stopped me. I'd known him for years, never yet invested. But he stopped me and he said, Julia, I just want to tell you, every 6 or 7 years, I meet about 5 or 10 people who I know will be titans of industry, maybe 2 years later, maybe 15 years later, but I think that they have what it takes. And he said, I have no idea why I think that about you. I haven't placed it yet. I think it has to do with your excitement or your passion or your vision or something, but I think you will be a titan of industry because of those qualities, and I would like to be there to support you when you are ready to be supported. And that meant a lot to me.
I wanted you to share that story because that was the exception, and hopefully the exception that proved the rule, that authenticity will lead to the path you want it to lead, because you had to make a lot of choices to continue to smile, to continue to share a vision in a very excited way, despite a lot of setbacks and a lot of failures, even as recently as this year. So if this were a real coaching session, we wouldn't be in front of hundreds of people. We'd be, hiding in the corner of Starbucks on University Avenue. Could you share with us, though, the two key takeaways, a thing to keep in mind and a thing to take action on that you would want to share with the founders and entrepreneurs here?
Sure. So,
and I will put them up as well.
Yeah, I know. I need my cheat sheet because we had so many takeaways after these conversations. So I think that the first thing is, many of you guys are about to embark or have embarked on. How many of you guys, by the way, have pitched to a VC or are planning to pitch? It's a lot of people, so that's great. So I think that it is, for me especially, the worst and the hardest part of the job. And I think that some real psychological intent needs to go into it. You might naturally love the challenge of of fundraising, and power to you. Keep on doing that. For those of you that don't enjoy it or relish the competition and the excitement, I would say that really, really take time for yourself. It's a very lonely time because the rest of the company doesn't know about it. You can't talk to people about your struggles because your job is to shield them from the ups and downs that you're going to experience. And so it's a very lonely time, and I would encourage all of you to figure out your strengths and amplify them and be authentic, because it's a very long road. And if you cannot stay authentic, I think you will have to continue being someone who you are not for the sake of your company, and that's very difficult. We work in behavior change, and one of the things that's so important is if you only have this much of willpower, and this much of willpower is basically all of your decisions get made by this finite amount of stuff. And you deplete that as you're making decisions throughout the day. And you deplete that when you are being someone who you are not. And it's the same pool of willpower. And so when you try to become someone you are not in a radical and stressful environment, that depletes a lot of decision-making power for you. And so you will just recognize that it'll be very tiring to make other decisions in a clear enough way. So authenticity is very important for giving yourself the most decision-making power for the decisions that actually matter. The second thing is what Anna Maria and I work a lot on are things that trigger you. And so it's helpful after meetings to do debriefs, introspection on what might derail you. And we're talking about these meetings, these 1-hour meetings, as time when you will sense a lot of power dynamic and balance issues, and it's important for you to figure out, once you start feeling that slip, if you're like me, I will downward spiral until I stop it dead in the tracks. And for me, it was, okay, I'm feeling like I'm losing control of the meeting. What do I do in that moment to get it back on? And for me, that was taking a step back and expanding and pausing and restarting. It might be for you. I know some people who actually go to the bathroom because they need to stop the momentum of downward spiraling. And then when they come back from the bathroom, they can recapture the room. I know some people who take sips of water and do that to pause and do that. I know some people who bring their co-founders in, and there's a trigger word or a signal where they know that their co-founder can take over for a while. So you need to know ways to help you get back on that. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing that I've found is, how do you manage your psychology through 1-hour pitch meetings, through 5-month-long fundraising sessions, through basically your entire life as a CEO. So those are the 2 takeaways.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Over there. Should I just stand up?
No, we should have mic runners. We got one here. The second one? Great. Think about your questions. You actually have on stage someone who has failed at fundraising and successfully fundraised.
Okay. So first, I want to thank you so much for the 2 of you being willing to do this. I have started a number of companies, and it was like listening to myself talk. The only real difference is that you consider yourself young I actually, by Silicon Valley standards, very ridiculously am considered old. So, but my executive coach happens to be here, and we're working on some of the same issues. And one of the things that we've been working on, and I want to know if you've experienced this too and how you two resolved it, is that many of us look at the future, particularly for a lean startup, as something that emerges, that is kind of unknowable. And so I have entered into VC meetings like knowing that there is an unknowable future and believing that we can handle it. But the VCs are used to seeing this very, I'm going to call it male energy, maybe I'm wrong, that is absolute certainty about the future, and tomorrow it will be exactly the same, or it'll be a completely different absolute certainty about a different future because something changed. So we're both doing, as my coach Marcy calls it, just-in-time decision making, but we're presenting it differently. And you know, like I said, I don't know if that's a male-female thing or whatever, but I'm wondering if this is something that you've encountered as well.
Thank you. Again, that also sounds exactly what I've encountered. Yes, I have. I experience very similar things. I think that I won't call it a female energy. I don't know if it's female, male energy, but I will say that I subscribe to your type of leadership, which is the future. We are getting as much information as possible about the future. This is our current situation of what we believe the future will be, and this is why we're poised in the best way possible to attack that future. If the future changes in this way, we will do this little pivot, and we will again be attacking this future. I think that that is a very core strength of startups, because large companies cannot do those pivots. Small companies can, and small companies with informed leaders about that information can shift their companies in the quickest ways to success. I'm actually experiencing something very similar right now in my own company. And I think that that's where you need to convince your CEO, your VCs that that being receptive to market forces and understanding market forces and listening better than perhaps your counterparts is a strength and the very core of why investors need to invest in startups and not just go put their money in an index fund, you know, with a large company that can just buy an industry. So I don't know if that helps, but I would say I think it is your job to find the VCs that believe that that is what a startup's core strength is.
I would also add that when I tell this to entrepreneurs, I usually shock them. The number one emotion that investors feel when you walk in to pitch them is actually anxiety. So entrepreneurs think they have the monopoly on anxiety, like it's very nerve-wracking to pitch, but investors experience a lot of anxiety. You know, is this someone I can trust with my investment? Is this really gonna work? Is this person gonna take more time than I have to give them because I have 17 other pitches to attend this day? So I think the challenge a lot of entrepreneurs face is they don't realize that they need to show up in a pitch where they can actually address and resolve investor anxiety so you can move forward to spin your big vision and get them excited. So my hunch, Julia, is that the tactics that you took not only made you feel more confident, they actually probably also set the investor at ease because they weren't picking up on these weird, oh, she's not confident vibes. And they were able to kind of move through that anxiety and get to a point where they could be open and excited about your vision. Other questions? There's one here.
Hi, thanks. I was wondering if you could expand upon your tactics for we're going to wait and see who else invests first. How do you deal with that?
we're going to wait and see syndrome is the lemming syndrome that plagues all of investor world. So you really need to look for that first believer. And that first believer doesn't have to be a hotshot name, but you can use that to your advantage. I think the wait and see syndrome is again an issue of confidence, and it's a power dynamic. If you present yourself as a person who basically doesn't need their help, and very focused on your vision, and it will be, the money will come in. It's something that shows through. So I guess that's one thing that I would say. I've discovered that the best thing for me is to think of it as a numbers game. I know that out of 100 people, 5 people might say maybe and actually mean it. 20 people might say maybe and are just wasting your time. And 2 will say yes. And so my job is to get to no's as quickly as possible. And that's how I kind of go through the list. And then the maybes that are actually maybes, but I think need help to get to a yes, what I do is I keep them warm, and then I get to the first yes, and then I say, I can't say who it is, but we've just gotten $4 million. Do you want to fill out the rest? Or if it's a really great name, I say, the founder of the largest semiconductor company just invested. Even if they invested, $20,000, I'll say that. And would you like to close the round with me? So it's you really have to understand when they say maybe what does it actually mean, and keep the momentum going. But it takes several months.
Hi there. I'm new to this space, so I was just kind of wondering, when you sought out an executive coach, how did you know that you needed somebody like that? What does the relationship work like? And how do you go and ask somebody for help when you have zero money in the bank? How does that work?
I'm very affordable.
Anna Maria is very affordable. Anna Maria is too affordable for her own good.
How did you decide? How did you decide you needed help?
I got the best gift of my life because one of my great friends and fellow CEO said, I want to give you a gift. It's an early birthday present, and he gave me 3 free sessions with Anna Maria, and it was amazing. And so, I think that's just a personal story. Obviously, that's not a helpful story. But I would say being a CEO is extraordinarily lonely at times, and you're also trying to grow. You're trying to grow yourself, but you can't really turn to your team and ask them to help grow you, because you kind of have to be a pinnacle of strength within your company. And so I would say I had a lot of mentors, but no one to really help me with thinking through my own thoughts, because I think what Anna Maria does best is usually I have a problem, it cycles around in my head, and usually nothing comes of it. Some stories come out of it, and these stories are sometimes not helpful. And so what Anna Maria does is I tell the story once, and then she helps me get out of that loop. So I would say for anyone who that sounds like it would be useful, who is growth-centric and wants to become a better leader, and not get business advice, but really become a better leader. I think, and honestly, someone to talk to, because I talk to my partner a lot, and he actually runs the company with me. He's part of the company, and we were just talking 24/7, and it was not healthy for the relationship. So I would say, if those are a few things that you're experiencing, a CEO coach is a great way to go.
Let's do one of your mics. Thank you both. Big thanks. Oh, thank you.